She's at home. She sends hugs and love to everybody.
To be a Unitarian Universalist means we'll never be done with the work of telling the truth about oppression, the work of resisting any laws, policies, or practices that deny anyone their humanity, the work of stubbornly seeking out the spark of the divine in each other no matter what, the work of creating heaven on earth. To be a Unitarian Universalist also means we're not alone in the work. We are not alone because of our promises to one another. We are not alone because we are companions on the journey. We grow ourselves into allies, helping one another get free, because none of us is truly free until all are free. Thanks for joining us in worship today. As is our custom, if you'd like to come and light a candle for a joy, a challenge, or just to bring more light into this room, please do so while we sit in stillness listening to the prelude.
Whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come.
Come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is your caravan, lover of standing, ours is no caravan, lover of living, ours is your caravan, lover of standing, ours is no caravan, lover of living, ours is no caravan, lover of standing, ours is no caravan, lover of living, ours is no caravan, lover of standing, ours is no caravan, lover of living, ours is no caravan, lover of standing, ours is no caravan, lover of living, ours is no caravan, lover of standing, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come.
Please arise in body or spirit for our chalice lighting and spoken affirmation. Our words for lighting the chalice were written by Anastasia Baroche. As we light this flame of hope, may our congregation become a kaleidoscope of souls and people. In the presence of this flame, in me, in you, in us, it's an invitation to sit at the table. May we tend our soul fire through these challenging and trying times to open the hearts and minds of all who enter these doors. Join me as together we remind ourselves of the affirmation that is the cornerstone of our free faith tradition. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. Thank you. You may be seated. Our opening thought this morning was written by Alex Jensen. He says to us, Unitarian Universalists can and do believe many things about life's biggest questions, about God, about the greater mystery, about what happens to us when we die. Though you can't be a Unitarian Universalist if you don't agree about some of the more important parts of this faith. You can't be a UU, or you won't be much of a good one if you cling to prejudice or oppressive views of others. If you in any way believe that someone else is somehow inferior or anything lesser than human, you can't be a UU if you can't tolerate big questions or critically examine what it is that you believe and why. You can't be a UU if you fundamentally believe there is only one path or one spiritual truth out there to make the meaning of life and to understand it. If you cling to just one set of beliefs, dogmas, or creeds, and shut out the possibilities and offerings of other traditions that are very different from your own, you're not a Unitarian Universalist. As wide as our welcoming embrace is, there are some things that are non-negotiable for us as a people. Those non-negotiables are the inherent worth and dignity of each person, no matter who they are. The rigor of critical thinking about ourselves and our beliefs. The bounty of the world's traditions that each hold a piece of the cosmic puzzle about how we might understand these wild, wondrous lives of ours. No, you can't be a Unitarian Universalist and believe anything you want. You can believe in a lot of things, but there are some fundamental things that bring us and bind us together as a tradition and a faith.
Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. the Spirit draw. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour. Gathered here in one strong body. Gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour. Gathered here in one strong body. Gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit draw near. Spirit draw near.
Our first reading is an excerpt from Susan Frederick Gray's Introduction to Unitarian Universalist Pocket Guide. This is no time for casual faith or a casual commitment to the values that matter most to you. This is also no time to be alone. Right now, we need nurturing communities that remind us of our connections and our responsibilities to one another as a human family. As Unitarian Universalists, we are learning how we better support one another, protect each other and our neighbors, inspire and remind each other of the power of community. We practice joy and love and teach these to our children and the next generations. Unitarian Universalism is at a crucial moment in its history. Like all institutions, we have not always been aware of or willing to grapple with the systems of privilege and oppression in which we are embedded and in which we participate. But that is changing in ways large and small throughout our denomination. Our faith communities are examining our practices, looking for the ways in which we perpetuate systems of oppression and seeking to disrupt those systems and attitudes that bar our path toward beloved community. We are called to put our values, our relationships, and all our spiritual resources to the work of wholeness. Together, imperfectly, we work to build communities and practices of inclusion, care, growth, and love. As we prepare for our practices this morning, let us hear these words from Reverend Rebecca Ann Parker. It's called The Choice to Bless the World. The choice to bless the world is more than an act of will, a moving forward into the world with the intention to do good. It is an act of recognition, a confession of surprise, a grateful acknowledgement that in the midst of a broken world, unspeakable beauty, grace, and mystery abide. None of us alone can save the world. Together, that is another possibility waiting. Please join me in a minute of silence. Our second reading today is also an excerpt from the Search for Truth and Meaning, called The Search for Truth and Meaning. It's by Anisha Shaki, and it's also in the Unitarian Universalist Pocket Guide. I have also been forced to confront the reality that no institution is exempt from institutionalized systems of oppression. It was disillusioning at first to realize that even within something as seemingly perfect as Unitarian Universalism, white supremacy and other oppressive structures are not only present, but prevalent. But this understanding has enabled me to more holistically work towards justice and liberation in all aspects of my life. I wear a chalice necklace every day to center me and remind myself of what is important. I think often about how different my life would have been had I not discovered Unitarian Universalism. And I always find myself thinking that I would be nowhere near the kind of person I am today if not for the decision to keep searching until I found what felt right. Unitarian Universalism has truly changed my life and continues to do so. It challenges me, frustrates me, teaches me, informs me, calms me, and transforms me in ways I never expected. Our third reading today was brought to us by Arthur Hirsch. He wrote it in the UU World UU News. The 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism have stood as a statement of fundamental faith values, unaltered for nearly 40 years. Not meant to tell UUs what they have to believe, but as a guide for people who choose to participate in UU communities. They explain the heart of the UU faith. Please join me in a responsive reading on the 8 principles now by Kikila Bordner. I will read the principle, and then please join me in the response, which is in italics. We Unitarian Universalists of the Red River Unitarian Universalist Church covenant to affirm and promote the 8 principles of our shared Unitarian Universalist faith. The inherent worth and dignity of every person means respect guides us in all of our interactions with anyone. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations is determined by those without privilege, power to establish the frameworks from which these are received. Acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations requires all to actively engage in ensuring conditions are supportive for all to thrive. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning is a challenging, ever-changing, all-encompassing call we must all answer. The right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in societies at large. It is about inclusive structures and communities that provide space for all. The goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all can only be reached through intentional co-liberation for all. Respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part asks us to remember that each and every creature is an embodiment of the love of the universe, and each of us must act accordingly. Journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions must be led by those who have been harmed by these and who have a vision for the future.
As a community, we Unitarian Universalists do not necessarily agree on belief issues like, is there a God? What is God like? How should God be worshiped? What we do agree on is our 7 UUA principles, and now for our church, the 8th principle, all of which we just reminded ourselves of with our responsive reading. Ours is a constantly growing, learning, and deepening faith. 6 principles were originally written into the UUA bylaws in 1961 as Article 2. And by bylaw mandate, they are reviewed every 15 years. In 1984-85 was the last significant change when the principles were revised for gender-neutral language, and the 7th principle was added. they have endured for almost 40 years. And to a truly astonishing extent, the principles and purposes have been woven into the fabric of our denominational life. Because of congregational polity, I hate that word, polity, defined as governance of the church is based on the local congregation, okay? Many changes in the UUA first happen at a congregational level. The eighth principle was first introduced by Paula Cole Jones and Bruce Pollock Johnson and was incorporated into the covenant of the UU Church of Restoration in Philadelphia in May of 2017. They recommended that the UUA adopt it. As of June 18th, 2023, 274 individual churches have adopted it. We were number 270, adopting it in May of 2023 at our spring meeting. In June 2023, at General Assembly, it was voted to begin the review and rewrite process of the new Article 2, which was put together under a mandate from the board of the UUA. Suggested changes are now under consideration. In the following areas, we will give some of the reasoning behind the proposed changes. It is important to be aware that other proposed changes may also be submitted and considered by the Article 2 committee in the next year, with a final Article 2 presented to the UUA at the virtual General Assembly next June. Note, words in yellow on the screen have been suggested for inclusion, and those crossed out for exclusion. Okay. Section C21, Purposes. The Unitarian Universalist Association will devote its resources to and use its organizational powers for religious, educational, and humanitarian purposes. Its primary purposes are to assist congregations in their virtual ministries, support and train leaders, both lay and professional, to foster lifelong faith formation, to heal historic injustices, and to advance our Unitarian Universalist values in the world. The purpose of the Unitarian Universalist Association is to actively engage its members in the transformation of the world by fostering spiritual wholeness and collective liberation and building beloved community through love. The reasoning behind these suggested changes is this section can function as our collective mission statement. In recent years, if you monitor the leading edge thinkers and theologians in our UU movement, the phrases that you hear over and over that are motivating to so many of us are beloved community and collective liberation. One aspect of the eighth principle that has not yet been incorporated into the proposal is, quote, journeying toward spiritual wholeness, end quote. As co-author of the eighth principle, this is very important to me because it is what makes us a spiritual faith movement, rather than just a political movement. Our Italian friends say that UUism sounds like a political party to them. Possibly. Racism and other oppressions damage the souls of both the oppressed and the oppressor. We all can only become whole spiritually by dismantling them. We are about helping all people thrive as their true selves, whole and flourishing. This is the idea of beloved community. Our movement has evolved from a focus on individual freedom through most of the 20th century to a balance between individual freedom of conscience and collective liberation. The brilliance of the merger of Unitarianism and Universalism is this balance between the head and the heart. This proposed wording moves us closer to a true embodiment of this purpose. As section C 2.2 on the screen. As Unitarian Universalists, we covenant congregation to congregation and through our association to support and assist one another in our ministries. We draw from our heritages of freedom, conscience, reason, science, hope, faith, and courage, building on the foundation of love. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude, compassion, generosity, and hope. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. We covenant to freely share our faith, presence, and resources, inseparable from one another. Our shared values are, to explain a little more, adding conscience, science, and faith to the list in the first paragraph, communicate aspects of our heritage that resonate with most UUs. For consistency, love should be capitalized, as it is everywhere else. This proposal treats love like the other values, with a description first, followed by what we covenant to do. We have moved compassion, one sentence earlier, and added generosity to the list, since it is no longer the name of a value. Similarly, changing these shared values to shared values sounds better and increases ownership. The first proposal included a drawing of key values on the screen instead of the principles. Now, before you become worried about not having the principles, they may still be part of congregational life. They will just not be in the actual bylaws. So let's look at each of these key values, surrounding and implemented with love. According to the authors of the suggested changes, quote, we need these values to represent all that we as UUs are and aspire to be. We need to make these values represent well who we have been and who we want to become. Limiting the values to single words limits the power possible in them, unquote. Interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of all existence. We covenant to cherish Earth and all beings by creating and nurturing sustainable relationships of care and respect. With humility and reverence, we acknowledge our place in the great web of life, and we work to repair harm and damaged relationships. Interdependence includes ecological and social concerns, including sustainable, is essential to reflect current thinking, current UU thinking. Next slide. Okay. Pluralism. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, compassion, curiosity, and respect. Compassion was added because the world and Article 2 needs more compassion. Transformative justice. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities has been crossed out, where all thrive. We covenant to accountably dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression by our actions. We support the use of inclusive, democratic, that's lined through. Sorry about that. Being beloved communities is not common usage. Building community is. By adding transformative to justice, we can change transformation to dynamic evolution, which is a unique property of UUism. It captures our embracing of science and evolution well before most other faiths, and that our understanding of truth and our expression of our foundational covenant is not fixed, but dynamic. Dynamic evolution. We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively evolve, transform, and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, and never perfect. Radical inclusion. You'll notice that the whole first paragraph is crossed through. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions. We covenant to implement inclusive decision-making processes and to display radical hospitality, acknowledging that newcomers change us with their gifts rather than seeing them as new members of our club. Generosity overlaps significantly with love. We move that language to the section on love. This opens space to add radical inclusion, including inclusive decision-making and radical hospitality as discussed by the Widening the Circle report, the Community of Communities concept, and the Trans Inclusion Workshop of the Transforming Hearts Collective. We move the inclusive decision-making sentence from justice to here, where it fits better. Equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and value. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and equitable communities. None of us liked inherent dignity and worthiness. Our preference is inherent dignity and value. But we could live with going back to inherent dignity and worth, or the original inherent worth and dignity of the old principles. Some familiar phrases are not a bad thing. Since we suggest adding a radical inclusion value, we change inclusive to equitable in the equity wording. That finishes the values discussion. Okay, now this is a longer section. Section C, 2.3, Inspirations. As Unitarian Universalists, we use and are inspired by sacred and secular understandings that help us to live into our values. We respect the histories, contexts, and cultures in which they were created and are currently practiced. Our inheritances include the importance of justice from Judaism, the importance of love from Christianity and Universalism, the importance of individual freedom of conscience and scientific rationalism from Unitarianism, the importance of skepticism from atheism, agnosticism, the importance of ethical principles from secular humanism, the importance of our relationships with the natural world and each other from earth-centered spirituality, and the importance of mindfulness and presence from Buddhism. As an evolving faith, we draw on these and other traditions. These sources ground us and sustain us in ordinary, difficult, and joyous times. Grateful for the religious ancestries we inherit and the diversity which enriches our faith, we are called to ever deepen and expand our wisdom. The reasoning behind the added paragraph is, this section is where we can give newcomers to UUism a good feel for where we come from, including where our spiritual values and practices come from. The proposed text wastes this opportunity to teach newcomers more about us, to give a context for our beliefs. From a political and practical point of view, since the new Article 2 proposal is quite radically different from before, putting in the material we have added here helps average UUs feel more connected to the proposal. Since the proposal needs a majority this year and a 2/3 vote next year, we want to have the language feel reassuring to longtime UUs as much as possible, but reflect some dynamic evolution and appeal to newcomers as well. Our proposed language is intended to mention practices and beliefs that show up frequently in UU worship services all over the country. and where they come from historically. There are no suggested changes to the next two sections. Section C, 2.4, Inclusion. Systems of power, privilege, and oppression have traditionally created barriers for persons and groups with particular identities, ages, abilities, and histories. We pledge to replace such barriers with ever-widening circles of solidarity and mutual respect. We strive to be an association of congregations that truly welcome all persons who share our values. We commit to being an association of congregations that empowers and enhances everyone's participation, especially those with historically marginalized identities. Section C, 2.5, Freedom of Belief. Congregational freedom and the individual's right of conscience are central to our Unitarian Universalism heritage. Congregations may establish statements of purpose, covenants, and bonds of union, so long as they do not require that members adhere to a particular creed. It's a lot of information.
Thank you, Jan. Our offering words this morning were written by Heather Christensen. Unitarian Universalism is a grand vision of a world filled with peace and justice, love and joy. That vision is embodied in a few large congregations, numerous mid-sized congregations, and many, many small congregations. No matter its size, every congregation depends on each of its members. Each one of you, by your commitment of time, energy, and resources, helps make that grand vision real. Individually and together, we are Unitarian Universalists, building a world filled with peace and justice, love and joy. The bowl awaits, or you may donate online.
Though below me I feel no emotion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry and heart can sing. I've been sailing all my life wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sailor, and moon, my rider, as I glide in the starry sea, leaning over the edge and wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heaven in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky a sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbored or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
I invite you to arise in body or spirit for the benediction and extinguishing the chalice. Our benediction this morning is by Matt Meyer. May we go forward in purposeful rhythm, that we may give voice to the melody of our imaginations and music of the souls, and all the possibilities of a just world as we might together create it. Go in peace. Please join me in saying the words to extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.